Hello and welcome to In Depth, a series on my channel where I go over guides, tutorials, analyses, and other information of games that I play a lot of. Today I'm going to be going over a made-up category that I made, I love, called Skull Protector. It's a category where you take the skulls hidden in each level all the way to the end of the level. In this video, we're going to be going over the rules, just general information about the skulls, and all the tricks that are involved in the run. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of information to go over, so that's why I'm making this its own video. But to start off with, the rules for this category goes as follows. A skull must be viewable in the player's hands at the end of level white screen. The category must be played on legendary. The white flash for the skull is not necessary, and the armory is optional. Just to go over like two things is that you have to be playing a legendary. There are a few levels such as Outskirts and Regret that if you were to play on any other difficulty, the skulls will show up and that you can technically do the category that way. If you're familiar with the Skull Collector or the Collect the Skulls percent on HaloRuns.com, the white flash for each skull is necessary. However, for this category, it's not. There's two levels where the white flash can be avoided, which are Outskirts and Regret, but you mostly see it on Regret because you skip a trigger that loads in that effect. But for Skull Protector, it is not necessary. And lastly, the armory does have a skull in it, the Whoopo or the That's Just Wrong skull. I did it in my earlier runs, both either at the beginning and or the end, but in my opinion, it really just doesn't add anything to the run, so that's why it's optional and you don't have to time it. First things first, we're going to be talking about how the skull generally works in the campaign. If you're familiar with Oddball in multiplayer, it's pretty much the same other than the fact that if you have no weapon, you have to press X to hold it, but in campaign it picks up regardless. But either way, in campaign you got to press your interact button, which for me is going to be the X button, but it's whatever your interact button is. When you're in this state, you pretty much can't use your weapon or throw grenades. If you try to shoot or throw a grenade, you'll drop the skull. As you can see, I tried to throw a grenade, didn't throw it. I'm going to try to shoot, it's going to drop it. So pretty much acts like a support weapon. You know, if you're familiar with Halo 3 and its turrets, it pretty much acts the same way, just a little differently. Skulls, like any other weapon, can be picked up through ceilings and walls. You don't see it much on walls, but you do definitely see it through ceilings. There's a lot of strats that involve it, plus on where they spawn. In levels such as Kyra Station and Uprising, you can pretty much hold X and pick up the skull as you're going up, and you can pick up skulls in this way. This won't show up too often during the run, but it is advised to be, to hold onto the skull when you're not doing a lot of the tricks, specifically in parts where different loading sections happen. So this is very a common spot where sometimes I try to do a grenade jump. It's not really worth going for on Delta Halo. When you go through this area, you're gonna see that I'm gonna get a loading done. Right? Going through this little area here. So say if I somehow drop the skull over there, but I pass through this area. Oh, a little farther. I can get in a situation where the skull will stay loaded, but there's no way for me to like actually grab it because it's so far into the load zone that if I actually go in there physically, I can't pick it up. You could probably do some shenanigans like throwing your grenade to like toss it this way. There's not many situations where that happen, but it's a good thing to know. For most of the levels, if you're not doing anything in between loading zones, you're most likely going to carry the skull. So this shouldn't happen, but it's good to know. In terms of scariness value for the skull, I'm still a little speculative on how it works. But I think definitely when they aren't, like say elites aren't attracted to you, I'm pretty sure they're more likely to melee you. And it also may have to do with what your secondary is when you swap out of the skull. So it's a little weird in that way. Definitely though, with melees, I think they're on par with either the rocket or the beam, whatever is below the rocket. It's definitely useful for sections like this, where you're like, you need to like punch your way through some areas. All right, let's get on to the tricks of the run now. The first one you're gonna see a lot of is what I like to call skull flying. I mean, a lot of the tricks I named, they just have skull in front of what they actually really are, like sword flying and melee canceling. I like to call it skull flying if you want to say like a pickup fly. This is a variation of a pickup fly. In Cairo Station, during base legendary, you do this with a plasma pistol going into the bomb room. But throughout the whole run, you pretty much have to do this almost everywhere you can, where it's feasible. But it's pretty much just like a regular pickup fly, with the exception that you need to let go of your right trigger or whatever your shoot button input is as soon as you pick it up. Because if you say hold it down, that wasn't a good example in that case, but you'll pretty much fling it almost immediately. As well as the range for the skulls, they have a pretty large range when you pick it up. So in order to not drop it almost immediately, having it like far away, such as like this, is pretty ideal. One thing to also note is that when you do your skull fly, you're always going to have your sword in your primary when you swap out of the skull. So depending on what situation you're in, you either want to swap back into whatever your secondary is, or keep your sword out. The next trick we're going to be going over is what you can do after you do your skull fly. So there's only a few situations where this really matters, and there might be a few situations sometime in the future when this category evolves over time. But you can let go of the skull mid-fly and do what's called what I like to call a skull fling, where you pretty much carry the momentum you have into the skull so you can have it flying. The first use of it is actually the first sword fly in the run. During this section. So in this section, you want to be able to cancel off of this guy, so you need to have your hands free. So what I do is I fling the skull past that point, and you pretty much want to do it almost immediately before like you stop, because if you do like a mid or stop and cancel your momentum, the skull's not going to go flying. So like I let go there, and you can see that it stopped in midair and landed there. So in that case, it didn't work. Let's do another one. In that case, you can see that the skull flung itself into this area somewhere. It's under there. Looks like it. There'll be other examples in Metro and later on. I think there's like two other ones at Cairo Station, and there might be some in the future. The next trick that we're going to be talking about is skull canceling. You know, it's just a variation of melee canceling that you could do with the skull. There's not a lot of areas where you can do it, but it is a good trick to know in areas where skull flying is impractical, such as like in crowded areas and like very tight spaces, such as Oracle here. So there's a few spots you can do it here. So if you get this carrier spawn, you can do it here. You do it on the run or the Lee. There's some spots in Regret you can do it at, and it's also a good thing to like, know how to do, just in case you're in a tricky spot in certain sections. Here's also actually a better example of skull canceling, as you can get a lot more momentum in this area because it's a little more open. But in regards to our next movement tech, as I would call it rather than a trick, it's pretty much juggling the skull juggling. You need to do a lot of things during some of the runs that require you to swap inputs or swap weapons or reload or juggle weapons in this case. So a good idea is to throw it up as you are doing this. So in this situation, I want to juggle the beam. So like I throw the skull up, I swap the rocket and beam like this, and then you need to make sure you know how to drop the skull with the right trigger and not shoot on accident. The skull actually takes priority over weapons as well. So if I try to pick the beam up right now, it's going to prioritize the skull. So you need to get used to like spacing out on how you juggle pretty much. Before we get into our one of the most important tricks, I want to talk about this first. This is a technique that is used only on regret, but was going to be used throughout the whole run initially. You can do this with weapons, but you can stick skulls onto pretty much like anything, like boxes and objects, like pretty much like any movable object you can pretty much do this on. You can do the same thing with weapons as you normally do it with regret anyway, as you can see here, with the sword. But I wanted to go over that before I go over the main trick that is what makes the whole category pretty much possible, and that's going to be skull smuggling. Skull smuggling is a trick that I discovered specifically for this category that allows you to take skulls into vehicles while you're driving them. There's actually, I think, 4 variations that I know about, and 2 of which are, or at least one of which is mainly used throughout this run, and then like another variation is used as a backup. There's 2, the one in Oracle is its own variation. We'll get to when we actually talk about Oracle. And there's a hardest variant. So we're going to go over the easiest variant first. What you want to do first is throw a grenade, which is left trigger for me, and then you want to swap weapon. And during the swap weapon animation, as you can see there, it puts you into a weaponless state. And during that weaponless state, lasts a few seconds. That's when you want to press X to hold the skull, and then X again to enter a vehicle. And you can do this pretty much with any vehicle. It works with turrets as well, because those are technically vehicles. But you have to do this all within that weaponless state. So I'm going to do it right here. Works just like that. So if I move over here, skull is with me in the vehicle. I will do it one more time with my input display. You can see those X inputs are separate. The next way of doing a skull smuggle is the second easiest way. It's one of the ways we do it on Great Journey. I'll go over this trick at the same time as well. You can get yourself into a one weapon state by overcharging a plasma pistol here while holding a skull. You see I have only one sword. And this also allows me to pretty much pick up anything almost immediately. So the skull is going to have the biggest range here, so I pick up that. And what this will allow me to do is, when I get out of a vehicle, it's going to allow me to carry the skull almost instantly. So if I set up myself like this, and I get on top of the skull and then go back into the vehicle, I can pretty much, while throwing a grenade, I can get the skull into the vehicle this way as well. But it does take a little bit of time. So you can hear that my grenade actually went off there as well, but I didn't actually throw anything, and that will sometimes happen, depending on the timings you do this in. There we go. There. Oof. Bit tricky. Sometimes you will or won't throw the grenade. The third variant is on Oracle, and we'll go over that when we do Oracle. It's pretty much the same thing, except you're like mashing left trigger. You have no control of how you get out of the Banshee in that section, and it's really weird. We'll definitely talk a lot more about it when we get there. But the hardest variant, I'm not going to even try, because what really makes this work is that the fact that you carry the skull after you throw that grenade. It's that weaponless state that you get into shortly. And for if you have a weapon, if you have 2 weapons here, like this, you have to do that X input manually to pick up the skull. I can try it like once here, but it'd probably look something like that. You throw a grenade, press X to pick up the skull, and then another X to get into the vehicle, get back into the vehicle, and it's a really tight window. This will probably be something like for a segmented run or something, or a task or whatever. I don't care. It's not practical. It's not practical, but it's good to know. But I'll show a clip of it. Something to know about the Skull Smuggle is that you can also do it in multiplayer, which was found by Monopoly. Speaking of him, um, the next trick that I'm going to be showing in regards to the run is specific to Great Journey only, because it's only useful in Great Journey. But it's triple wielding, holding through weapons, whatever you want to call it. This allows you to take a third weapon to the skull in this level. First of all, you want to have be on a weapon that it can either be a dual-wieldable or non-dual-wieldable weapon, but your weapon that's in your secondary has to be a dual-wieldable weapon. Doesn't matter if it's the same weapon or not, but it has to be dual-wieldable. And the inputs go as Y to swap, LT to, or left trigger to throw a grenade, and then the next series is hold Y, which I'm pretty sure is to wield it, tap Y, which I'm pretty sure is to drop it, and then mash Y, which is some black magic, allows you to carry it as a third weapon. But I'll try to do it here. Oh, look at that. I got a first try. Nice. In Great Journey here, it's the main method that I go for. I don't know what to call the other trick where you overcharge the skull. I call it like a PP drop or a skull drop. That's my backup for this level. But it's really useful because it makes that section so much easier. The last main topic I'm going to go over is the most complicated one. This is in regards to weapon order and carryover to other levels that can have carryover. It's different on each level, but carryover requires that your weapon order is really specific, and I'll go through each level, both in the respective guides, but as well I'll go over each level that it's important in this video as well. For the first level, going from Outskirts to Metropolis, it doesn't matter what you have going from Outskirts to Metropolis, but what's really important to know, at least in this level, in regards to the rules that the skull must be visible on the white screen, you can't actually exit the level while still in the Warhog, because if you do that, you'll have your normal carryover, which, yeah, it's faster to do that. However, it's invalid in regards to my rules. So what you do is that you get out of the hog, and you're going to see that I'm going to have BR sword going into here. And then when I enter Metropolis, I actually get a full reset. I've done extensive testing on this level specifically to see what makes it work, and you get a full reset, and so you have to play this level a little differently in how you would in base ledge. I'll show you what that also looks like if you just enter the end trigger with the Warhog, and you'll see that it carries over the sword. As you can see, I have the sword and BR here. I'm gonna do this instead because it's the same checkpoint. But you're gonna see once I exit the level like this instead of the other way around, you're gonna see that I'm gonna have the sword and BR carried over. So if this happens to you, run's invalid. You can still continue it if you want to like practice it. But in regards to my own rules, the skull must be visible at the end white screen. Otherwise, what's the point of the category in the first place? It's also a good way to know that, you know, you have the skull. And that's kind of why I implemented that rule in the first place, because there'll be times where you do the skull smuggle and you just don't know if you have it at all. But that's Metropolis, or Outskirts going to Metropolis. It's pretty simple. There's pretty much no carryover whatsoever. Now for the next set of levels that have carryover, weapon order is actually now going to be really, really important. And what I mean by weapon order is how you start off. So in the Arbiter, the first level where this matters somewhat, you start off with a sword and a plasma rifle. So you can think of those slots as slot 1 is the one you start off with, so the sword in this case. And that you can call that, what I like to call it is just your primary. And in context of the rest of this series, when I say primary, this is what I refer to, and your secondary is going to be, you know, the second one you start off with. And no matter what, if you swap out your primary with any other weapon, it'll stay your primary no matter what. Even if, say, you swap out your sword with the beam, and then you swap your secondary out with the something else, and then your primary somehow becomes a plasma rifle. Doesn't matter, since if your plasma rifle right now is your secondary doesn't mean if it's your plasma rifle becomes in your sword slot doesn't mean that's still your secondary. That becomes your primary. I probably made it sound a lot more complicated than it needed to be. Essentially, what you just want to make sure you're keeping track of what your weapon order is. On the route when you're picking up weapons, it's pretty defined on what weapons you pick up, so it shouldn't you shouldn't have to keep track of it. But when you're learning the route, you do have to learn to make sure that you pick up the right weapons and keep your order correct. In regards to Arbiter, the carryover goes as such. It is whatever your primary is, it gets carried over. So in this case, it's going to be my sword. And then your secondary that you have right now, in this case, it's my carbine. The secondary that you have right now gets replaced with the secondary of the one in Oracle, which would be a plasma rifle. And I actually didn't check this, so I'm actually going to do this right now. I want to make sure that it does this for a uncarryable weapon, which would include a emptied out weapon. So I'll make sure I don't get a full reset here. And I believe, yeah. So I have 3 nades, which means since I have 3 nades, it means that the fact that even though I emptied out my secondary, it still carries over my primary and replaces my my secondary with the secondary of this level, which is the plasma rifle. So for Delta Halo going into Regret, it's pretty much the same thing as Arbiter. In Arbiter, it doesn't really matter though. But in going from Delta Halo to Regret, it does matter because you want to carry over a sword if you can. And in this case, it's going to be whatever your primary is. In this case, right now, it's my sword. And your primary gets carried over. And then your secondary, in this case, it's my rocket. It gets replaced by the primary, not the secondary, but the primary of Regret, which is going to be the beam. So if I finish Delta Halo here.
Watch yourself. Honor guard.
Yeah, even though I just emptied out my rocket, no matter what, it's still going to give me the same carryover as if I didn't, which is going to be now I'm going to have it's going to start me off with the beam, which is my primary now, and then my primary that carried over, which is now going to be my secondary. You can see. So essentially, my primary from Delta Halo, which was my sword, carried over to Regret, and my secondary got replaced by the primary of this level, which is the beam. So in Sacred Icon, going into Quarantine Zone, at the moment, I tried figuring this out to make this work so I can have a plasma pistol going into Quarantine Zone from Sacred Icon. Right now, I'm a little iffy on it. I am still unsure on how the carryover works on this level because I thought I did one point, and that's what I'm going to show right now. But take this with a grain of salt, and we'll just say that right now that SI going into QZ is a full reset because I've done a lot of testing and it's very weird how it works. But with this particular seed that I have, I'm pretty sure if I carry over oh my god, dude, I have so much writing here. Hold on. I think if I carry this over with the plasma pistol, I won't try to explain how it works. I'm just gonna show what happens. So I think this case, my secondary is... Okay, my secondary was the rockets, and I think I swapped out my rockets, right? Okay, cool. So this is how it looks like. Oh, crap. My sword carried over. Okay, so it's my primary that gets carried over, and then it doesn't really matter what your... I think it does matter what your secondary is. I think that also has to be carryoverable. Doesn't really matter, but this would be used for Quarantine Zone, so you can get yourself into a one-weapon state, so you don't have to do the easy version of Skull Smuggle, which requires you to have another weapon to swap with, but in this level, it's really hard to do that in. When we come to Quarantine Zone, we'll talk about it a lot more, but it gets you in this weird, gives you this weird half-emptied carbine and whatever your primary was, but I still unsure. Take it with a grain of salt. We're just gonna call this level a full reset when you try to carry over anything. From going to from Uprising to Great Journey, it pretty much acts the same thing as Regret. You want to have your whatever weapon you want to carry over as your primary, and then whatever weapon is your secondary. Doesn't really matter if it's uncarry-overable or not. In this case, right now in the route for Uprising, you would want to swap out your rockets with the sword, so you can then get your sword into your primary, and then you would get the skull. I'm just gonna cheat because I'm too lazy to actually do the level right now, but you would get the skull, and then I'm gonna turn this on. And normally, if you would know this, yeah, rockets are uncarry-overable. But in this case, since I have my sword in my primary, when going to Great Journey, what will happen is pretty much the same thing that happened in Regret. Your primary gets carried over, and your secondary gets replaced with I believe the primary of Great Journey, which is a plasma rifle. Sorry, I had to cheat there for high charity because I don't know how to do high charity skip. But as you can see, I have a plasma rifle and a sword in Great Journey, and this is really useful for this level because doing gap jump is awful. One thing to know about carryover for like all levels, even if your weapons do get replaced, your grenades, they do not. So as long as you get any type of carryover of some kind, your grenades will carry over as well. So they won't refresh if you have less than 4, and the level after the carryover level gives you 4, they won't refresh. The last level we're going to go over in regards to weapon order, in this case, it's going to be Gravemind. I went over this in my 100% guide, and I was going to talk about it more in this guide as well. But how you have your weapon order going to get the skull really does matter, because all throughout this level, the skull acts as a tertiary weapon as opposed to a support weapon, which means that from the very start of the level, whatever your primary is and your secondary is, it doesn't matter, because at the end it reverts your order to whatever your primary is. In this case, it's my beam, and then it goes to secondary, which is your sword, and then it goes to tertiary, which is your skull here. And in a situation, you can end up like this, something like this, yeah. Where if you pick up the skull, your sword would be like this first, your primary, and then your beam, your secondary, and then it'd be your skull. So you couldn't do sword flies, obviously. I think theoretically you could somehow get a like a YY or some bullshit like that to do a sword fly like this, but it's not ideal. Obviously you can switch it back if you have the opportunity to, such as like this. And definitely I'll go over this in Gravemind a lot more. Yeah, that's pretty much the last specific thing that I wanted to go over. But I do want to go over kind of the story of Skull Protector, why this category exists in the first place. For one thing, I do not know how to do high charity skip, so which means I have to do high charity full path. And as you know, the Iron Skull is, you can pick that up in the lift. And I had the idea of what happens if I pick up Fly with the skull, and I did it, and it was pretty interesting. So that gave me the idea of just seeing if I could do it on pretty much every level. See if I can bring the skull to the end of every level. And that was back in late 2024. I didn't really start routing this out until, I want to say, early 2025. I started on Outskirts because I thought the driving levels were going to be the most important ones, since I wasn't aware on how to skull smuggle. as I talked about with the skull sticking property or the weapon sticking property, that was going to be the main method. I'll show a clip of that. Right? This is going to be so fucked. Oh my fucking god, dude. No fucking way. Oh my god, this is so dumb. This is how we do it. This is how we do it right here. This is the strat for Outskirts. Oh my god, this is so fucking dumb. No way! Wait. That thing is just fucking stuck? Oh my god, dude. Holy shit, this is hilarious. Yeah, it was really stupid. After quote-unquote routing out Outskirts, I thought about what levels would be like the hardest, and Arbiter was really up there. I thought it was gonna be almost impossible. I was trying to do some weird fucking butterfly, even though I didn't know how to butterfly going to the end trigger. It is possible to butterfly with the skull too, believe it or not. You just can't Y. You can't press Y or your swap weapon input. But I pretty much all throughout 2025, I wrote at every single level besides Oracle, because Oracle was one of those levels where if you try to take the skull into the cutscene, it makes you drop the skull when you're trying to get into the Banshee, and it flies all the way into the air. So I found out that that was going to be the level that was actually the most impossible. After I wrote it out most levels, I was messing around in Arbiter, and I figured out how to do the skull smuggle, which I knew I popped off, but I can't really find any video of me doing it, because I'm pretty sure I took a video, but I guess not. So I immediately went to every single driving level and then rerouted those levels, and I went back to Oracle. And this is around the, I want to say, the tail end of 2025. And I did a lot of R&D. I was trying to find some way to skull smuggle it through the cutscene itself. It didn't work. I was trying to do MSLs. I was really desperate in that way. Oh! 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 I even wrote it out post MSL with some crazy ass gravity going into the trigger, because the trigger does exist when you're in the reactor room, or in that, like, post cables. The trigger still exists out there, which is insane. But I was doing this one day. It took me, like, I was going on and off on it since from like late 2025 into early this year, 2026. And I was doing some of it on stream, and Mr. Monopoly was in my chat during the time, and he had never seen the skull smuggle trick before, and he thought it was really cool. And he asked me if he can share the trick, and he'll credit me in the trick. I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. It's a really cool trick. And he did that. A day later, I fucking love this. There was someone in his comments and that YouTube short that he uploaded that was like, oh yeah, I already knew about this, blah 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 blah, something. I forgot what he said, honestly. It was a whole argument that was had in Mono's comments, and Mono disregarded it, and he told me about it, and I thought it was fucking hilarious. So I decided to read it, and I found out that the current way that I knew how to do it was the swap weapon way of skull smuggling. But the way he was describing it was actually the hardest method that I know about now. That if you, like, get out of the vehicle and then, like, throw a grenade and get the skull, that was the way he was describing it, and I did it exactly the way he described it, and I did it, and that was the clip that I showed. So through that's how I figured out, like, with some other trial and error with Oracle. That's how I figured out how to make the Oracle skull smuggle work. I think it only took like a day or two, because I made a video on seeing if anyone can help me out on it. And it took a day. It took a fucking day to figure it out after I read those comments. It was so funny. But yeah, no, that's it's pretty much the whole story of Skull Protector. It's a really interesting category that I made up. It reminds me, for a lot of people who know me from my Mario Maker stuff, it feels like it's creating something new that no one has ever done before, and I think that's what I was getting joy out of. It's like making shit up that no one's ever seen before, especially finding new glitches, which is actually insane. It's debatable whether or not the Skull Smuggle trick was new. At the very least, I found a way to apply it in some way that no one has ever done before, which I find really cool. I'm glad that I was able to show this off at GDQ, the GDQ hotfix that happened earlier in April. That was kind of like, why the fuck not? Why not do this at GDQ? I was kind of grinding it out, and it was one of the last things I wanted to do anyway for Halo 2. And appreciate Jiggy for accepting it, because it was really cool to show off. The run was really cool. I'm glad I was able to show off, and I hope to do something like this someday with some other categories, and maybe Halo 2, maybe Mid to Madness 3, maybe Blinks. I don't know, but yeah, that's Skull Protector. History for you. But in regards to the rest of the videos, we're going to be going levels by levels. It's not going to be the same thing as 100%, since there's a lot more going on in regards to this category than 100%. So there's going to probably be around 6 or so videos after this. It's going to start with Cairo Station, then Outskirts, Metropolis, and so on and so on. Because there's a lot to this category. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was very informational, and yeah, see you in the next one.